Are you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week, we're going to be answering 2 listener questions. But before we get there, we want to first thank you guys for sending in questions. And if you have any questions for us, please go to budgetcouple.com, click on the contact link, and it'll take you right to a page where you can submit a question to us. And we will get to your question as soon as possible. We have a few more in the line to do still, but overall, I think we're in good shape with questions. So let's go ahead and get into today's question, or our first question, should I say, and I'll let Danielle go ahead and read it because I'm a terrible reader.
Okay. How can I budget for an aging pet? It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, a big vet bill falls into our laps. We have a special credit card we use just for their medical expenses, but having 4 pets and half of them senior, it sometimes hits us really hard. We don't plan on having this many again, but we can handle a couple hundred every few months, but sometimes it's way more than we can handle, and we can't pay it off by the end of the month. It's usually a snowball of emergency clinics, meds, treatments like surgery, and just regular follow-ups. I know putting them down is an option, but we want it to be our last resort to stop their suffering. We've had these pets for 10 plus years and they're part of our family. Should we change our priorities to vet bills rather than credit cards? So thank you very much for that question. It's actually pretty relevant to us. We're pet lovers as well, and we totally hear you on the putting down option. You know, they are totally family members, so that would be only we would only do that in our eyes if they were suffering, and we could end that. So understand your pain, and I understand having a ton of animals. I grew up with that, so we're pretty accustomed to this.
Absolutely. And it's also relevant to our life because unfortunately Danielle's grandmother is going into hospice. She has a dog and we may be adopting that dog. Is that the right word? Adopting? I don't know.
Inheriting?
Yes. So we'll be kind of taking care of that dog, maybe. So we have to see if that's happening. There may be another family member that does it. But the dog is 10 plus years old. Our oldest dog, Maggie, who's been with us since like our 3rd week of our marriage, she's just turned 10. So we have 2 older dogs possibly in our lives as well. And yeah, it's something that we need to start thinking of. So your question actually brought up a lot of thoughts for us because it's not something we've had to think of, mainly because I don't want to think of my puppy girls getting old.
Yeah, we've done things differently. We have been pretty relaxed about vet bills because thankfully we haven't had many. We've been pretty lucky. So we have a budget for our pets each month, but it just encompasses what we pay for them each month. So it's around $60 a month for food, give or take. And then on the months where we have vet bills, maybe it's $200 that month, and we just raise the amount in our budget for the pets. And we have enough cushion each month that it's not a big deal if that varies somewhat throughout the year each month. But I could see it becoming a problem if, let's say that Maggie, we learn of some condition where she's going to require a lot of care or medication over the next couple years. In that case, we'd probably start budgeting for that. So we would actually start setting aside money each month and putting it into savings or something so that we would be able to pay for that care without just a constant, stream of increasing our budget. Now, with that said, if there was some immediate need, like say she needed a $5,000 surgery in the next week or 2, we would actually take that out of our crash fund. So again, we have a 3 to 6 month crash fund available, and we would take that money right out of there because it's an emergency and we would treat it as such.
And again, we are animal lovers. They are part of our family. So we treat them like part of our family. If one of us got injured and we needed money, we would take it out of our crash fund. We do the same thing with our pets. Not our fish per se, but definitely our 4-legged friends we would definitely take care of and do what they needed to do so that they could have a comfortable life.
Yeah, so I mean, it's for us, it's worth spending the money, and it's worth dealing with that and budgeting around it. Now, in your case, and in our case, if we were to start inheriting more vet bills in the near future, what we would do is probably try and figure out about how much we spend on vet bills each year. So go back through, figure out what you've been spending maybe over the last few months and kind of spread that out across the year and figure out what your yearly vet bills look like. And then go ahead and divide that number by 12 and put that amount of money away each month into savings. And, some people like to just lump everything into one savings account, but if that is not the way your mind works, you could always open a separate savings account just for vet bills and pets, or just categorize it within your broader savings. So just pay for all of those vet bills out of that fund. And you might have to front load it a little bit if you guys are in the throes of a lot of vet bills at once. But that would probably be the simplest way that we would go. And again, I would also say you could go with digging into your crash fund if you have that available and it's an emergency situation.
Right. And you also mentioned that you're still paying off credit card bills from other things and all that kind of stuff. So the harder question was, do we kind of pay for vet bills or do we focus on debt? We would always focus on the vet bills first because, again, they're part of our family. That's to say to a point where if like it was $100,000 to take care of the animal, it's time to let the animal go, unfortunately. But if it's something manageable, something that you can do, then yes, we would do that. And then while you're paying off your debt snowball and going through all of that, you're going to be paying it off slower if you're putting money away each month for your animals. But that's also making sure that you don't have extra debt because you have money set aside already to pay when new debts come up. You can pay it immediately. And while your snowball is going to be much, much slower, you'll still make progress and you won't have new debt occurring on it. So it's a really important thing to do to make sure you have your debts paid and to also plan for future debts.
Yeah. And I think that about covers that first question. If you guys ever have any follow-up, just feel free to email us again. But at this point, I guess if you have nothing else, we'll move on to the next question.
Sounds good. This one comes from listener Christina.
She says, within the last 8 months, I got married and my husband and I bought our first home. Congrats. I, like you, Nate, am a teacher and only get paid 10 months out of the year. My question is, how do you budget and save for the summer? She tells us, I'm pretty good with saving money, but with the new house, there are a lot of unexpected expenses and more monthly bills to pay. I'm trying to pay down my own debt with credit cards, student loans, and car payment. As a result, I haven't been able to save as much as I'd like. I have 2 side jobs where all the money goes directly into my savings account. Even though this helps, I feel like it won't be enough to last through the summer.
So this is something that we found ourselves very much in when we first got our house as well. When we originally got married, I was a teacher. Well, I lived in Texas first, but once I got my first teaching job, I was a 12-month employee, and it wasn't a big deal. But then when we moved to Maryland, I became a 10-month employee, and we had to kind of figure this out. So what we did was we took a typical paycheck. So whatever your normal paycheck without anything extra, just a normal paycheck, and multiplied it by 20. That's because there are 20 pay periods in a 10-month cycle if you're paid bi-weekly. So I multiplied that by 20. And that tells us how much money I make a year after taxes, which is the real amount of money that you actually make. After that, I took that number and divided it by 26. This would simulate 12 weeks of bi-weekly pay. So you have then a simulated paycheck of how much you would actually have if you were paid 12 months instead of 10. From that, you take your original paycheck and minus it from your new simulated paycheck, and that's going to give you a difference of money. It could be $100, it could be $500. Whatever it is, that's going to be the difference between what you actually make if you were 10 months versus what you would make if you were paid on 12 months. Now, that sounds a little confusing, but it's not too bad. It's really just going through and figuring out what would I make if I was paid over 12 months. Once you do that, once you have that difference, all you're going to do is take that money and put it into your savings account. And that's going to add up over the course of the year. So your savings account is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because there's going to be 4 paychecks that are going to be in there that aren't really in there. It's really going to be closer to 6 paychecks, honestly. So you're going to go through and you're going to have a bunch of money that you're going to have in your savings that will be able to pay you over the summer. So what we're really looking at here is when it comes up to summertime, what you're going to do is you're going to take money from your savings account, and every 2 weeks, you'll move it over to your checking account for whatever your normal paycheck is. So you're basically paying yourself over the summer. You've divided out everything, and now you're a yearly employee instead of just 10 months.
So, we decided to handle it that way during the first few years just because we still were getting established. We had just bought a house and we didn't have a ton of extra spending money. So we wanted to be really disciplined and careful. And so that really helped us to manage our money and manage that weird 10-month salary.
Yeah, and having the simulated paycheck really forces you to do two things. One, it forces that discipline, so you're disciplined in your spending, and also disciplined in your budgeting, which it sounds like you're already good at, but this really helps you kind of figure that out fully. And then it also allows you to live on less. It forces you to do that, so that when you do make more money, that debt payment comes off really fast because you're used to living on not as much money as what you quote unquote make.
Yep. So now we don't do that anymore. We're not quite as disciplined, and maybe that's not the best thing, but we have a few things have changed for us. Nate actually does summer school pretty often, so that gives us a little of extra money. It doesn't totally supplement paychecks, but it gives a little extra money. And on top of that, we don't have daycare for the full summer. So the saving money from not having daycare also helps us out because that just removes some of the expenses in our budget during those summer months. And we do some other things too, just to help manage it. We try and stay a bit more on track with our budget and are a little more careful. And we also stop Nate's Roth IRA contribution during the summer months. Now, we do make sure we still max our Roth. We just have his, during the 10 months that he's working, we have his Roth payment a little bit higher, so it accounts for that. But we go ahead and stop that in the summer. So all of those things combined allow us to manage the summer months without much of an issue. But honestly, the best practice here, I think, is to do what Nate just explained with dividing those paychecks up and paying yourself in the summer.
So in summary, for both of these questions, it's really just kind of figuring out how much you make or spend a year and dividing it out and then putting that money away so that you have it available to you when you need it. It's difficult budgeting that way, and it's difficult to learn and spend that way because if you're used to living on, like, let's say $1,000 a month, and now you're living on $800 a month, that's a massive hit. But then you have that sustained income for a longer period of time, which balances things out and really makes everything a lot easier. We found that it made life easier for us. It allowed us to still do the things we wanted to do, but we had to plan on it different ways, and we didn't really get to have all the bells and whistles that we wanted immediately, which is fine. We didn't need to live with all that stuff, so it worked out just fine for us, and hopefully it will for you as well.
Yeah, it forces you to anything like this, where when you're setting aside money each month for something that you know you're going to have to pay later. It helps you prioritize, and it makes sure you're not spending money that you can't spend, because even if you have it in that 1 month, it might be something you need to spend down the line and you won't have it in that instance. So you'll go into debt. So this is really allowing you to be disciplined with your money, prioritize with your money, but also making sure you don't go into debt at all. Except for house. we are of the opinion that that's kind of a necessary evil for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up today. If you guys have any follow-up questions or clarifications needed, please let me know. And also, we got a couple of messages, including one from one of our listeners answered in this session, asking about a blank budget for us. It is on the website. I'll put it more clearly on the website so people can download it, access it, and use it. But we have a Google form, or should I say Google Sheet, that we use to run our whole budgeting process. We talk about that in episode number 2 if you need to learn more about that. But I'll make sure I put it on a more prominent place on our website so that people can access it real super easy and be able to go with it from there. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks so much for your questions. Again, if you have anything else, you can go to budgetcouple.com and click on that contact form, and we'll respond as quickly as possible. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.